Welcome to the state51 concrete laboratory. Today we're going to be casting a record in a slab of concrete. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up my concrete and then we're going to take it over to the Atelier and then we're going to pour it in the mould. So to start with, I'm going to measure out my sand. We measure it by volume rather than weight because the sand is wet and the cement is dry. So I'm going to do 3 parts sand, like that. And we're going to do 2 parts cement. That's 1. And that's 2. So the cement is basically the glue that holds everything together. The sand is there to kind of fill it out a bit and adds a bit of strength. If this was real concrete, we would add larger aggregate. But this is good enough for what we need. It does contain stones, but because we're casting quite a thin block, if the stones are any bigger than that, we're going to actually run into problems and it's going to create, they're going to come through the surface of the mould basically. So we stick with just the sharp sand, and that makes a pretty strong kind of mortar basically. So I'm going to mix this. Okay, so we've got pretty good mixture of, see there you go, there's a big one, don't want that. We've got a pretty good mix of the 2 components now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to very gradually add our water. So we generally, there's no point in measuring out the water because the sand is wet. So different bags of sand will have different water contents. When you open a bag of sand, obviously it's going to dry out. So it's very hard to tell how much water is actually already in the mix. So what I'm just going to do is add a little bit at a time and just mix it until it looks right. Okay. A little bit more. You can just start to see the moisture on the sand, so what we want to do is put just enough water to make the mix kind of glisten just a little bit. Okay, so it's looking quite mud-like now. It sort of holds together quite easily. It's possibly still a little bit dry, but what I'm going to do now is add the secret ingredient, which is called super plasticizer. Basically what this does is this makes the mix more fluid it allows the mix to just kind of slide over itself without the need of adding extra water, because the more water you add to the concrete, the weaker it becomes. So we want it to be as dry as possible. You see it's very kind of dry now. Once you start mixing the super plasticizer, you see it will become much more liquid. Now it will settle when I hit it. Still is looking a little bit dry, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more water. That should be enough. Okay. So now when I hit it, it settles quite nicely. And that should be good for the mould. I think we're good. Let's take it on through.
Yeah, definitely. That's right. Yeah, it feels a bit like common.
Okay, so we've got our mould here. This is a silicone mould that I made. I made the kind of positive out of plaster. Then I cast this silicone negative, and then we're going to make the positive again out of concrete. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to turn the vibrating table on, and I'm just going to put the first layer of concrete onto the bottom here. So the vibration has flattened the first layer. This is our record, the Abstract Concrete debut album. And what I've done is I've taken the vinyl and I've cut a disc of card from the LP itself. And I've sandwiched the record between that to protect it, and then I've vacuum packed it so that no moisture will get in during the casting process. So that just goes on there, like that. Okay. And then the rest of the concrete is going to go on top. Now I'm going to turn the vibration on to just help that settle a little bit. So this part's quite tricky because basically we have, where the record is, we have a very thin layer of concrete. That's sort of relatively easy to deal with, but then around the edges we have a much deeper layer that kind of acts more like a lake or something. When you push it sort of one way, it comes up on the other side. So that's why it's good to keep the mix as dry as possible to stop that from happening quite as much. Basically we just want to push it around until it feels somewhat flat, and then we can test it with this. So it's a bit high there, a bit low there, so put that there. And the more I kind of work this, the more it will sort of bed down. So it's a little bit high in the middle, but that's okay. I just keep working that. So that's more or less it. As it starts to cure in about an hour or so, I'll come back and I'll just make sure that everything's totally flat. It will be a little bit easier to work on the surface at that point because the trowel won't stick quite as much. So I can really work that and get it nice and smooth. But for now that's fine, and it will be ready to take out of the mould tomorrow morning. Okay. It's the next day. The concrete should have been cured by now, so I'm going to open it up and take a look. All right, let's get this out. And there it is. Looks good. So what I'll do to just finish it off, although it hardly needs it really, I'll just break these edges a little bit, because there's sometimes bits that kind of stick up. That's all it needs really. So that's just going to dry for about 2 weeks probably, and then I'll just put a few coats of varnish on it just to protect it a bit, to stop powder coming off. But yeah, that's it.